Welcome to the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, and it is my pleasure to bring quality programs to all of you. I am excited to once again be here with another amazing young lady who's also a graduate of one of the HBCU universities, which we all talk about, and I'm so excited to be talking about her today. I can't even get my words out. So I wanted to make sure that you please stay tuned and listen to this podcast, and also take the time to go to all of the pages and listen to all of the podcasts, because these incredible folks are here on this platform to give you information that you cannot find anywhere else. So please take advantage of this unique opportunity. I also want to let everybody know the purpose of the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast is not only to share our industry information and our publications, but it's also a way for us to encourage career seekers and working professionals to enter this line of work. So please make sure you take lots of notes and reach out to people if you have any questions. I also want to take a moment to thank our corporate partners and sponsors, which are a family of authors, Butler Upstairs Consulting Solutions, Human Resource Learning Center, JNF Enterprises, and Women Offering Wealth, along with many of our business partners and sponsors who's helping to make this event a success. So today we have a dynamic young lady who's on the podcast today, and I want to bring to the podcast Nikki Shawn Taylor. Nikki Taylor was raised in the city of Detroit, Michigan, where she graduated from St. Mary's of Redford High School. And later after high school, she decided to attend Grambling State University, where she earned her Bachelor's of Arts in Mass Communications with a concentration in Public Relations. In January 2017, she later earned a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Phoenix. Woohoo! She's a Phoenix just like me. Go ahead, Nikki. Okay. So today, in her endeavors, her work consists of being a vice president for the Detroit HBCU network, where she works tirelessly to educate parents and students on the significance and importance of education at historically Black colleges and universities. And so, with that, she brings 15 years of marketing, workforce development, and college recruiting experience to her repertoire of skills. And so, with that, I want to bring Nikki because I want to hear more about what you do at the HBCUs and what brought you to that. So welcome to the podcast, Nikki.
Thank you. It is really a joy to be here this evening. I'm definitely excited to talk to you as well as the audience about historically Black colleges and university. I am definitely a proud graduate of the Grambling State University, class of 1997.
All
So
right.
yes, thank you so much for having me.
Woohoo! Well, you know what? I applaud that you're on here because I'm gonna tell you, it is refreshing to have some young people come out here and be on the podcast, because it's really hard to get young people to come out and really step up. And so, one of the things I like to always start the podcast with is just getting to know a little bit about you, your upbringing, what brought you to the university or high school, and what was your passion and why you do what you do. So, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and and what drove you, or what is your passion as you were growing up?
Sure. So growing up, grew up in the city of Detroit, born and raised, and I was blessed enough to have parents who worked really, really hard, and they wanted my sister and I in private schools while we were growing up. So I was in private school pretty much from the second grade all the way up through graduating from high school. And one thing about the education that I received at my high school was very rich, but it was also chock full of false expectations. So under the guise of you're in a private school, you're a private school kid, you're supposed to have certain stuff. So while my parents were working very hard to afford me this wonderful education, what they didn't know is that I was being bullied. And when I say bullied, I mean from the perspective of if I didn't understand or didn't have a conception of the consequences of suicide through my faith, I probably would have committed suicide.
Oh my
And
goodness. See.
yeah, I never wanted to share that with my parents because I always thought that, it's my mom and dad are working two jobs each to afford my sister and I this opportunity, and I don't want to be unappreciative or be a burden. So it was just something that I kind of kept to myself and just never really talked to anyone about. And so when it was time to apply for colleges, because I was at a small private Catholic school, we had the typical recruiters from the Michigan schools come. So Michigan State, University of Michigan, Eastern, Western. And at that time, I was actually watching this show called A Different World. And when those college recruiters began to come and solicit, for me to enroll, because for the most part I was a pretty good student. And I told my mom, I was like, I don't want to go to school here. I do not want a repeat of high school. I want to go as far away from Detroit as I could possibly get. And not knowing and understanding that Hillman was actually a fictional school, I was like, yeah, I'm going to Hillman.
Oh, you know what?
So
A lot of us believe that Hillman was a real black college. I mean,
exactly.
because I'm gonna tell you, as much as we love that show, and many of us knew that it was not a real show,
Hmm.
the way that the characters portrayed and made it seem so lifelike and really, appealed to us as our
Yes.
peers,
Hmm.
I really felt that that was a real school. I
Hmm.
really did. At least I
I did
did.
too. I did too. And so, after doing some much needed research, I discovered that not only was Hillman a fictional institution, but in spite of that, there were 107 other historically Black colleges and universities throughout the nation. So I began to again do some research, and I settled on going to Louisiana again because I was trying to get as far away as I possibly could. I had a cousin at the time that attended Southern University, and only because I'm, very honest and transparent. I will never ever admit this again in life. But Southern was one of my choices, and anybody who knows anything about a Southern and Grambling rivalry, you never repeat that out loud. So, but Southern was one of my choices. Grambling State was one of my choices, and Clark Atlanta University was one of my choices. And so when I went and did the college tour, I didn't even make it to Southern or Clark because I was absolutely sold when I stepped foot on the campus. And there was something, thinking about it now and everything, hindsight being 2020, thinking about it now, I didn't pick Grambling State University. Grambling State University picked me. I come from the city, so it was expected that I came with a certain amount of, grit and life experiences, and I didn't. My parents were, for the most part, pretty strict. I had a pretty strict upbringing, a lot of aunts and uncles. My mother was a teen mom, so I was in part raised by my grandmother and grandfather. So I had a lot of oversight. And so when I got there, I very much felt welcome. I felt like the ancestors that had came before me were expecting my arrival in the spring of 1992. I immediately felt a sense of cultural pride and heritage and legacy and history. Coach Eddie Robinson being the winningest coach in football history, but I didn't know that when I gotten there. I didn't know anything about the school, with the exception of having done my research on the mass communications department, which is where what I end up majoring in. And so, I spent my 4 years there matriculating on that campus, and I was involved in everything. So I'm coming from a high school experience where I was, bullied and very much introverted. And I can say on that campus is where I actually learned to learn. I learned how to be who I was. I learned how to be accepting of everything that I was. That was a dark complected, beautiful chocolate little girl from the city of Detroit who had made her way almost 1,800 miles away from home. I was involved with every single thing I could get my hands on because I felt like I had missed out on so much in high school, for the most part, walking around trying to keep my head down so that I wouldn't be a target. So I was a member of the Public Relations Student Society of America. I was the president of the Michigan Club. I was Miss Michigan for the coordination. I was Miss Mass Communication. I was Miss North Campus. I was involved in with the radio station. I was on the student union board. I helped bring one of the first mass communication conferences to the campus, where we invited local television and radio personalities for people that were interested in pursuing mass comm as a career. So I really got a chance to start being me, if you will. And so that is how I, thanks to Whitley and Dwayne and the other casting characters and Bill Cosby's and the writers, and my mother having faith that I would be responsible that far away from home. Yeah, that's how I got there.
Okay, so that was some phenomenal information that you just shared about your history and all of the accomplishments. And I have to, first of all, applaud you for all of the different levels of accomplishments that you have done in that time span. But I want to dig a little deeper and really kind of speak to the student now. When you were actual student and
Hmm.
being there and looking at all those things and trying to relate what you knew about Hillman on that show versus what you was experiencing real life, and how do you translate that into words where other people who are going to college and want to do the same thing? What was some of the driving forces that really helped you along and was able to get you the
Yeah.
opportunity to achieve all of those things? What was those things that kind of just tagged and held on to you and say, you know what, I could take this, I could take that, and I can go here and I can go there?
Well, one of the driving forces initially would have been my grandfather, who was very, very instrumental in the way I felt about myself growing up. I was always complimented and expected to do better. You know, I came home with a report card one day and I was like, he asked me, "What did you get?" And I was like, "Oh, I got all A's, B's, and two C's." And he looked at me and said, "A C is average. Are you average?" And I'm 14, 15 at the time. And I'm like, well, maybe in science. And he was like, no, there is nothing about you that is average. And my nickname actually comes from Nikki Giovanni. My real name is Tanika. And so Nikki is obviously not a derivative of Tanika. And so, my upbringing was very much that. So when I got past high school and I got to college, I began to see why I was actually there. Another driving force was there were some pretty tough times growing up. I can remember some, and remember I had very young parents. So my mother and father are learning how to be an adult with two children. So there were times where there may not have been any heat. There may not have been any running hot water. There may not have been everything that you actually wanted under the Christmas tree. But my mom and dad worked very hard. We always had Christmases, but there were some hard times. So when I got to college, I realized that not everybody gets this chance. Not everybody had the support system because for a very long time, I assumed that, hey, if I can make it, anybody can make it. And that's simply not true. Looking back, I know that even though I may not have thought I had everything that I needed, I did. And most importantly, I had the belief in myself, even though it was not what it was then versus now, but the belief that I was smart, the belief that I could go somewhere and accomplish something in 4 years and come back with a degree. And the way the university cultivated that was that everybody around me, at least 85% of them anyway, were about the same missions. There are other Black boys and Black girls who look like me, who may not sound like me because they're from Chicago and New Orleans and Dallas and Houston and Washington D.C. and Compton, California. I met people from all over the United States as well as some students from abroad. And when I got there, it is very difficult to be in an environment where people are striving for better and you decide you're going to do the opposite. I had so many people who I had maybe just a class with, but they inspired me because they too may have been from the Bronx. And not only did they not have a mother and a father to help them get there, they may not have even known if they would be there the following semester due to financial difficulty. So when you are in an environment where people are working, we're having fun, and yes, we're college students, but when you're in an environment that, first of all, based on historical references, you're not even supposed to be in, you have a completely different appreciation for what it is you are actually needing to accomplish. So between my upbringing and my family support and just my ability to be outgoing without any restrictions, because my voice was stolen from me in high school. And so when I got to college, I just decided, you know what? I am going to do and try everything I possibly can. And I wrote for the newspaper as well. Anything that I could do to express who I was or to get a piece of the 4 years of high school that I had missed out on, that's what I did. I wasn't afraid to try anything. And again, I had people around me who would say, hey, you're a mass comm major. You should come over to the radio station, see if you like that. I remember Houdini came down for campus. And because I happened to just be at the radio station trying to learn how to work the control board, they said, hey, we need somebody to give these guys a tour of the campus. So here I am walking around with Houdini on the campus, giving them a campus tour. So it just really does something to your psyche and your ability to believe in yourself when everybody around you that looks like you, sounds like you, wants better as well.
Okay, so given the fact that you had that experience and all that you just described, was this the main reason why you decided to go into educating students on the importance of HBCUs? Because what I want to try to get out of this conversation is what is the benefit of going to a historically black college or university versus the mainstream universities? What are the benefits? And maybe get into their heads some of the
Hmm.
things that they should or should not know about it. Because I'm going to tell you, a lot of times we don't hear about historically black colleges and universities until it's brought up in a conversation.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of advertisement about it unless you're in school. But there's, like, for example, and this is a perfect example, when my son hit 10th grade, he's in 11th grade now, but when he hit 10th grade, I was getting letters from all different type of universities from everywhere, but not one of them was a historically black university
Hmm.
or college. So how do I know what the benefits are if I never hear about it?
Data and research. And so, first of all, let me say you are absolutely correct in recruiting efforts across the board at HBCUs. One of the reasons why we typically can't reach all the students that we would like to is because of funding. It really does boil down to resources and money. I have no other way to explain it. And so we also are not, we don't have large endowment funds like PWIs, predominantly white institutions. So we are, the little engine that could. And most oftentimes, when someone hears about a historically black college or university, it is through the recruitment efforts of alumni. So I got involved with the Detroit HBCU network about 5 years ago, just recruiting, getting out, and giving students the opportunity to hear about my experiences along with other HBCU grads. And what I realized was that a different world was no longer airing. And not only was a different world no longer airing, there was a company some years back when I was in undergrad that produced these college sweatshirts, but they had all HBCUs on them. And during my heyday, when Tupac and Biggie were popular, this is what they wore. And so you would have people like Tupac and Biggie and Russell Simmons and LL Cool J. Any hip hop artist at the time was rocking those sweatshirts. And then TLC actually had it on in their Baby 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 video. When I saw that video, I was like, oh my God, that's my school. So again, I've got the information about the school, and then I have somebody imprinting on me from just, a musical perspective. And so when I looked at the data, which suggests that enrollment at HBCUs has gone down since the 90s, since 1999, ironically, there was nobody else carrying the torch. And so that's what ultimately made me get involved. And so when I look at the data and the historical numbers, HBCUs graduate more doctors and dentists and engineers and scientists and teachers, judges, and military professionals than any PWI in the nation. And so, to your point, people don't know that. There's also a lot of data that supports the graduation and retention rates for Black students attending HBCUs versus PWIs. We graduate on average about 52% of our students across the board. Now, some schools have much higher rates. I know Morehouse is at about 42%, and I believe that Spelman is somewhere close to 70%, along with Howard University. So you have some colleges that are higher. But what I always caution parents to take into consideration that graduation rate doesn't mean that every student, that the vast majority of students are not graduating. Graduation rates simply mean that student didn't graduate within 6 years. That's the benchmark. So you do have some students who come across difficult times and they aren't able to continuously go because of funding or financial aid. They may stop and then come back. They aren't counted in the graduation rates. So as parents are doing their homework and their research, be very careful about the numbers you're looking at and make sure that you are getting specific information about that school and that school's program. So the ability to just get out and get the right information into folks' hands is what inspires me.
You said one really critical piece that I kind of want us to talk about a little bit more, which is the the graduation rate
Mm-hmm.
and how we should look at the data. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's
Mm-hmm.
no way that I would have known to look at the graduation rate because we
Mm-hmm.
see that when we go into the FOSTA application and
Yeah.
we put in the school code and it talks about the graduation rate.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us do not even know what that really means
Mm-hmm.
to our students. And I would say that most of us, just go on the premise of my child wants to go because he or she said this is what they want to do and this is what the school, but how many of us actually really
Excellent.
go into the school and really look at what they're getting, what they're
Mm-hmm.
coming out with? Are they building a career roadmap? Are they even choosing the right degree program? And all of these types of things. And so when you say about the graduation rate of people who are missing the mark, not graduating on time because of some reason or another, that's
Mm-hmm.
the gap. That's the gap that we need to fill.
Yes.
That is where
Mm-hmm.
we need to come together and say, what is the problem with funding? Why can't
Mm-hmm.
someone finish school so that they can be counted? And then for the people who are not counted, what percentage are they in? I'm
Mm-hmm.
now interested to find out,
Yeah.
okay, out of that 100%, how many are not graduating on time? How many people are graduating within a 10-year period?
Mm-hmm.
Those are numbers that I'm really interested in finding out what their ages are, what degree
Mm-hmm.
programs they're in, so that we can start looking at some resolutions to these problems.
Absolutely.
And and also for the fact that a lot of HBCUs are not getting the proper funding.
Absolutely.
That's another issue that I'm finding really kind of astonished because, again, it's one of those things where we never hear of these things. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like I turn on the TV and they say, okay, Howard University is down by this percent
Right.
because of this. We don't hear of any of that. And why do you think that there's such a gap in the communication of letting people know that this is the resources that need to be, raised to the
Yeah.
public?
Well, one thing is competition. After the civil rights movement and after blacks were granted access to this America as we now know it, meaning discrimination is now illegal, that meant more opportunities for black students. And so, one thing I am constantly running into that literally burns me up is this comparison that people want to do with HBCUs and prominent PWIs. And so, one reason the disconnect believes, and this is just my own personal opinion, but one of the reasons the disconnect is there is because of self hate. And if you don't love yourself, you cannot love what represents you. And if you can't love what represents you, you find no value in it. So if Grambling State University comes calling with their football program and you don't know that Eddie Robinson has won more collegiate games than any other coach in football history, then Penn State, i.e., Joe Paterno, is a much attractive offer because they've sent you a T-shirt in the mail along with this letter on this fancy, paper, and they've told you that you've got a full scholarship, and now you're excited, but you know nothing about the school. And not only did you know nothing about the school, you were excited because you got an acceptance letter, not understanding what environment you've actually been accepted into. And so again, I think that not being aware of how great of a people we truly are, when we just start to hear about movies or stories about the three women from Hidden Figures, all of those women were HBCU graduates. Oprah Winfrey is an HBCU graduate. Taraji P. Henson is an HBCU graduate. And I'm only using celebrities because those are names that people know. I can come up with a list of phenomenal people that are not celebrity, but that have come up with life changing inventions or research, and they were all HBCU graduates. So the disconnect really happens because we are not as self aware as we should be. And so when you're beating the drum and you're trying to convince someone, no, you are great and your people are great and your institutions are great because your people are great, that's a whole nother battle you've got to fight before you even can introduce an institution of higher learning that happens to be or was created for black folks. So it's a lot of that, and it's also a lot of marketing and access. I tell people all the time, you cannot go to the Lexus dealership with Toyota money. And a lot of times people get caught up in great marketing. They get caught up in Big Ten games and I'm going to be on television and I seen that college on TV doing March Madness. And they have no idea of, first of all, what that school costs. And second of all, what it takes to get to and through. So the first thing we have to do is be mindful of who we are and to know that if we can produce black doctors and lawyers and surgeons and nurses and teachers during the 18 and 1900s, I'm sure that we are quite capable of doing it now in 2017 and actually doing it much better because now we have access. Nothing more, nothing more fulfilling than learning in an environment of people who look just like you. And not only do they look like you, they want it for you. And they fight for you. And they fight for you because they know what this world has in store for you once you graduate from an HBCU.
Okay. And the other thing that I want to add to the list of what you said, because I definitely agree with everything you said in terms of, and that's going to be the theme, I think, for most of the podcast participants, is knowing our potential and who we are. But I
Hmm.
also want just put out there that we have to, and I'm just going to be saying, I'm just saying it straight out, we
Hmm.
have to stop being lazy
Yep.
about self promoting. Because here's the thing, while we can sit up and say that there's not enough funding or we can't do anything, it's not going to hurt a facility administrator or a student to pass out flyers or
Hmm.
to get on their social media and talk about their school and the events that happens at their school, or to get on a radio platform, which hundreds of people have online radio platforms that can easily talk about the school. So I think for me, because I'm kind of getting fired up, I'm listening to you. I'm getting fired up, and I'm saying, okay, well, there's a gap there, but what's the easy fix? I put on my Facebook today, literally today, if you don't have anything to say, be quiet.
Hmm.
But at the same time, don't get mad when you don't have the information that can be to be given to you so they can help you. And I just kind of feel that as a people, we're so busy in the mind frame of it's going to be somebody else's job or it's going to
Yes,
be somebody else's responsibility, but it's really all of our
it
responsibility.
is.
And I'm like, if the school is suffering with financial problems, that's when, like you said, we need to understand what our power is. And we
Hmm.
need to take back our power and say, okay, let's get some flyers, let's get on the platform, let's go talk to somebody, let's have some events, let's bring people to the school to generate that awareness and therefore become a powerhouse. But we're not even doing that for ourselves.
Hmm.
And so people who's listening to this podcast, I'm telling you, we have to change your mindset.
Absolutely.
We are a greater people. We have tremendous buying power. If you just listen to Sahara's podcast, where she talked about how I think she said that African Americans spend $1.3 billion a year
Hmm.
on a lot of things,
Yep.
but yet we're not in a community where black businesses or minority businesses as a whole is circulating funds within our community.
Hmm.
That speaks volume. And if you're going to an HBC school and you have no idea what you're going to be doing and how you're going to stand out and how you're going to get back, we have a problem.
Absolutely.
A huge girl, you got me fired up on this podcast. People gonna be like, "Hey, let the girl
That's what we
talk."
want, though. That's what we
And
need.
I'm
And
like, "Let
and
you talk." But I get so passionate listening to you guys talk because it just lets me know, and it actually validates. It validates some of the stuff that I'm seeing and
hmm
researching on, because I'm thinking maybe it's just me. Maybe
mm-mm.
it's just me, but the more that I talk to folks, the more I'm realizing that this is a real problem and we need to stop talking about it and we need to start doing something about it. So, Nikki, I'm going to get off my high horse right about now. And we're gonna swing the podcast around to some of the other things that you're doing for the schools, or whatever. What other
Mhm.
initiatives that you are personally working on in addition to what you're doing at the HBCU schools?
Absolutely. So one thing that I would also tell people, this is not an indictment against PWIs. This is me simply urging people to do your research, because at the end of the day, college, no matter what college or university you select, is a business, and you cannot run a business for free. So just like Grambling State University would tell you that your funds are low this semester and you potentially won't graduate, just like Grambling State University would tell you you can't graduate because you have an unpaid bill, so would any other institution, whether it be an HBCU or PWI. So I'm really telling parents and cautioning parents, if you will, you cannot let your child make a knee jerk reaction based on them getting a t-shirt in the mail. One thing I want to tell parents is that they have changed the student loan laws. There used to be a point in time where you could actually borrow enough money to get you to and through school. The laws have changed on how much you can borrow as an incoming freshman, and the laws have also changed on how much a parent can borrow. And so when I say the laws have changed regarding parents, I'm talking about the credit requirement. And that credit requirements usually adversely affect who most? Black folks. So at the end of the day, you have to be aware of what type of child you actually have, the grades they have, the ACT scores, the SAT scores, and what you qualify for as a household. Our HBCUs fall out in three tiers, and I like it not based on quality of education, but based on cost. So at the very top, you've got based on cost, Howard University, Hampton University, Morehouse, Spelman, FAMU, which is Florida A&M University. You've got these schools and several others that are ranging between $42,000 to $44,000 per year. Up under those, you have your second tier schools, Grambling State University, Southern University, Wilberforce University, Tennessee State, Jackson State, Alcorn State. Median price, you're looking at between 22 to 29. And up under there, you have your third tier, again, based on cost, not quality of education, a little bit less expensive. So Miles College, Talladega College, these are smaller universities, so the costs aren't as high. So when you as a parent are looking at what you earn and what the funding source is telling you you're supposed to contribute, you have to be able to close that gap. So if your incoming freshman can only take out, say, $10,000 in student loans, and the school costs $42,000, and you as a parent only get approved to take out $10,000, well, you're $20,000 short. How are you going to close that gap? So you really have to not only do the research on the university you want to attend and the program you want to study, but you also have to do the research on how you are going to fund getting to and through college. And that's one of the reasons why the graduation rates are so low for us, meaning Black students, is because we don't do enough research. You have got to have a plan in place for how you are going to come up with those funds that are needed. And I hate when students have to work and go to school, but the harsh reality is that you may. And so you need to be prepared for that. Nobody wants to go away for college for a year only to come home because you didn't have a plan for your sophomore year, or you didn't properly fill out the FAFSA, or you didn't want your tax information sent in for your child, so now they're out of school. And then that goes against the borrowing accessibility for students coming behind you. We're all linked together. And so again, research is going to be key. You want to find out the costs per semester. You want to find out about the program. And then you also want to figure out what your child is going to do after they graduate. So those are the things, those are the key things, those three things right
Right.
there.
And I want to add to that list because I'm still fired up, Nikki. I'm gonna tell you, is that I am very big on research. But in
Mm-hmm.
addition to research, you have to pick up the phone. You have to
Mm-hmm.
talk to a physical person. You can't always go by what's online because some of that is superficial. So
Yep.
you really have to make sure that you look at a 360-degree view and validate your information before you get into it and know that this is what you're getting into. And even after you get into the school you want to, make it your personal business to stay on top of that FAFSA application if you know that it's
Absolutely.
coming around in May. You should be looking in December and on the phone with your financial counselor to make sure that what they have in the system is what they have in the system. If you need to turn in any tax papers, you have to get it ready. If you want to do your application early, FAFSA is not stopping you from putting your application before time.
And the
Make
earlier
sure
the better.
the earlier the better. And you
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that your program doesn't change because as college over time, those programs change. You want to make sure that you're still in line on with your college degree, because you don't want to
Hmm.
be, especially if you're there more than 4 years, you want to
Yes.
make sure that you still come out with a degree that's gonna fit you, because you can end up having to take more classes because you had to switch your major. So
Yes.
these are types of things that you have to stay on. Just because you get in doesn't mean that everything is going to be smooth sailing. You still have to eat and sleep, and you still have to function, and you
Hmm.
still have to maintain and get around with transportation and everything. And you still want to go out and have fun, but you need to make sure that the research you get is constantly being updated with new information so that you stay ahead of the game.
Hmm. One other thing I would like to add to that is that a lot of people will make a decision based on receiving a letter in the mail that says I got a scholarship. You may have gotten a scholarship, but is it a full ride scholarship? A lot of our athletes will receive letters saying you've gotten a scholarship, and then before you know it, they've signed a letter of intent, which is contractually binding. So no, you can't back out of that and decide you want to go to a different school. You have to know that scholarships come in many different forms, and they don't always cover everything. Room and board is typically not covered in some scholarships. Books are typically not covered. Your meal plan may not be covered. If you have gotten scholarship from a school, you need to find out the dollar amount of that scholarship, and you need to do the math on what it costs to attend your college or university for 1 year. If you got a $20,000 scholarship, but it costs $42,000 to attend that school, you still need $22,000. And so I want to again caution people about marketing materials, because that's what an acceptance letter is. That's exactly what it is. I worked in marketing for 15 years. My job is to get you to buy something or buy into something that you may not be sure about, but because I've dressed it up and made it look really, really great, you're going to lean my way. So you got to be able to make sure that when you get those scholarship offers, read the fine print and know exactly what they are applicable to, those
Right,
dollars anyway.
right.
Yeah.
And speaking of scholarships, just for a moment, Nikki, what is some of the best ways for our people to apply for scholarships? I know you have some where you
Hmm.
write an essay or you have to do some other criteria, but really, what is the best way to seek out and actually apply and obtain a scholarship?
Oh my goodness. And there are millions and millions and millions of dollars that go unclaimed every year in scholarship funds just because people don't want to do the work. The UNCF is one of the most underutilized resources. I can't even think of how come people don't understand how much money the UNCF raises to support kids at colleges and universities. Now, the UNCF is not just for people who want to attend historically Black colleges and universities. Yes, they do have a list of schools that they support, but they also have dollars that go in support of students, meaning if you get a particular scholarship, you can take those dollars to any institution. And so we have got to start doing our research. One thing I did and my son is only 11, but he is very well versed in college is going to be free because I am going to be smart enough to capitalize on every opportunity that I can. Anybody that you pay monthly for a bill probably has a scholarship fund. So if you bank with Chase, if you eat at McDonald's, if you wear Nike gym shoes, if you are left-handed, they have scholarships for people who are ambidextrous. Just because you can write with both your hands, they have a scholarship for that. There are endless resources for scholarships. And there's this one site that I don't particularly care for because it's a lot of information, but it doesn't really show you anything. If you just started out with your local credit union, if you have a high school student that is at least 16 years old, you need to get them a credit union account because credit unions offer scholarships and it's just based on an essay. I have helped a multitude of students write essays and get $500 scholarships, $1,500 scholarships. It's not enough to cover the tuition, but it is enough to cover books for a semester. It
Right.
is enough to cover your meal card or your meal plan for a semester. So all of those things, anybody that you do business with should be doing business with you in the form of scholarship dollars. So wherever you spend your money, that corporation, believe me, has a scholarship fund somewhere. And just make a list of anybody you cut a check to or you ran your debit card, go to their website and type in scholarships in their search bar and watch what comes up.
Wow. Okay, you know what? We're fired up. We're on fire on this podcast. Nikki, I have to tell you, we need to like be matter of fact. We really do need to be a matter of fact on these podcasts because I can't stress to people enough how we have a lot of folks who have already been through the trenches and found out this information the hard
That
way.
way.
The
Mm-hmm.
hard way, y'all. And we're on this podcast, on this platform, and we're literally giving it to you. We're giving it to you. It's not like there's no excuse.
Right.
No excuse whatsoever to not find out. And here's the thing, everybody has their contact information on their page. They you can literally reach out to them if you have a question. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what it's all about for us to connect and collaborate and patron and to inspire. And I definitely feel inspired that we have a new movement. That's the tagline, be part of the movement. And Nikki, you are making a movement to educate people on the necessity of a historically black college and university and what we need to do to fix and close these gaps that we talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, what do you need to thrive? What do you need?
I need open-minded, resourceful people. I need for people to really take an honest look at who you are as a black person in this country that is seeking higher education. Could you imagine what our universities would be like if every athlete decided to attend an HBCU or if every class valedictorian decided to attend an HBCU? I really want people to give their blackness a chance. I want people to understand that it's not about, the schools don't make you, you make the school. And that's what makes alumni organizations and universities themselves so great, because people come back and they support and they cultivate. And if I could tell people one last thing, it would just be, look at all of the contributions we have made to this country. This country was built on the backs of our ancestors. And if they have not figured out a way to mass market it to make it more appealing, I've never seen so much cultural appropriation in my life. We come from an era where, dark skin was frowned upon. Now you've got a tanning salon on every corner. Thick lips were, mocked as looking like a monkey or a baboon or ape. Now you've got lip injections hitting every Hollywood red carpet that you can imagine. You've got cultural appropriations all across the board in our music, in our dress, our swag, our lingo, our dialect, just how we are as a people, because we're dope. And we don't understand that. And if we don't have anything left, what we do have left that we can still save, that can't be taken away from us, are our historically black colleges and universities. If we step up to the plate and just give each other a chance, just look at how great you are and imagine that greatness manifested over 100 years of people that came before you. We've got HBCUs that were founded in 1856. You're talking about some time, some wherewithal, some stamina, and just the ability to survive. These Our HBCUs were not meant to be. They were created with blood, sweat, and tears from people who knew that we were going to need a place where we can go and get educated and feel loved on and supported. And I'm just asking, people across the board, do your research, take a look, compare. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. HBCUs still have higher graduation rates than PWIs collectively. We do. You can go right to the US government website, us.gov.ed, and pull that information. All statistical data regarding graduation rates and retention rate, all that information is there. Just do your research. But you got to start by being open minded and giving what looks like you a chance.
Phenomenal. That is just very powerful. I don't even know what to say. You got me speechless now, Nikki. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, you got me speechless because I am fired up. I am a huge supporter of education. I get excited about it because I know for myself it was very hard for me to learn proper education because teachers, and not just black teachers, but teachers in general in my generation, did not care about the level of education that students were getting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, I can say it because this is my specific life that happened to
Yep.
me. It was so bad that I had to actually transfer myself out of one high school to another just so that I can get some education. In the 10th and 11th grade, I was still unable to properly do math and English and science, and I did not really get that afforded education until I was in the 11th grade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had some of the basics, but I wasn't as proficient as my son is more proficient, way more proficient than I ever was when I went to school. But that's because over the last 30 some odd years, we really kind of taking hold of the education and really trying to step it up. But 30
Mm-hmm.
years is too long to be getting this going. It has
Yeah,
still been years and years and years, and we're still not quite there, and we need to stop sitting on it and really getting it in there. I think some of the things that I really am impressed with these days is that the level of education towards science and technologies and trying to
mm-hmm.
integrate that in the schools. However,
Absolutely.
all the schools are not doing it. You can't just have 4 or 5 schools that just major in business and finance. All of the schools should,
Mm-hmm.
not just a few schools. And so my efforts is to use this platform and any other platform where I can speak to just say we need to increase what we're doing, not decrease.
Absolutely.
Not decrease. So I'm gonna have to end the podcast because
Oh, it
I'm
went
about
by
to
so
go there
fast.
again, Nick. But I want to continue this conversation in other platforms and other webinars. So if you feel as strongly as me and Nikki on this podcast, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to have a discussion panel, something that we can really get nitty gritty on and really do some good and come up with some resolutions. Reach out to me, reach out to Nikki, reach out to
Absolutely.
anybody on this platform. If you want to also take a moment to look at all of the pages and listen to all of the podcasts, because there's some dynamics to a lot of stuff in all of the different interviews that are coming up. So with that, Nikki, I want to thank you for being on the podcast today and sharing all of this hot information about the HBCUs and the PWIs. And I'm going to tell you, we have to definitely get together and talk more about what we could do to solve the problem and actually implement it as well.
Well, I'm glad, and it was definitely a pleasure speaking to you, and I'm looking forward to more great things to come.